This girl got on this app and said, bar for bar, white people in America are coming to the realization that black history is white Americans' future. It was in regards to the recent revelations from the Epstein list. So if you don't know what the hell's going on, first of all, you're living under a rock. But second of all, it's worse than you could possibly imagine. Like, the crimes to humanity, it cannot get worse than that. But the craziest part about it, it's that it's happening to white people. These are white children, not black children. There are specific parts in that email and those documents that explicitly say, we don't want black children. We want white children. Why you think they don't want black children? I don't think it's because black people are more vocal or whatever. I don't think that's necessarily it. I mean, these are billionaires. Like, if this was happening to black people wouldn't give a fuck. Let's be honest. It's because they've been there, done that. All the horrible shit that those Epstein lists contain, they did it to black people first. This shit ain't fucking new. This was what slavery was like. The only difference is they openly did that shit. The reason that they're doing it to white children is because for them, there is no greater power trip than that. Because damn near everyone fucking brutalizes black people, right? But to do that to white people and get away with it, that's a power trip. I'll leave you with these beautiful words by Martin Luther King. Yeah, I know about the stuff about Martin Luther King, but he says some shit. He said, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Now, do you guys see?
Okay, this is going to sound arrogant coming from a white guy, but I finally figured out why it is so infuriating to be black in America. And just hear me out. You can let me have it if I'm wrong. But the infuriating thing about being black in America is not being pulled over for driving while black. It's not being passed up for the promotion that you deserved. It's not even the generational wealth and opportunity that your family lost because of redlining in your grandparents' generation and the centuries of oppression before that. What's infuriating is that you can't talk about it. You can't talk about these things without being accused of playing the race card and making it all about race. That's the infuriating part. It's like you're not allowed to talk about reality, your own lived reality, without constant pushback. So we made this documentary, The Sins of Our Fathers, Race, Religion, and the Rise of Trump, which actually just came out this week. Because we realized that Donald Trump didn't deceive us, we deceived ourselves. Because we refuse to face the truth of our own history as a nation. So we're bringing it all to the light so we can face reality even if it's uncomfortable. Because until we are honest about our white supremacy, past and present, we have no pathway forward as a nation.
The black community has long suffered under the weight of systemic racism and discrimination. As white people, it is our responsibility to use our privilege to support and uplift the black community. Here are a few ways that we can be better allies. Listen and learn. We need to listen to black voices and experiences without interrupting or dismissing them. We should educate ourselves on the history of systemic racism and the ways that it continues to impact the black community today. We should seek out resources, books, and documentaries that help us understand the issues. Next, speak up. We should use our privilege to speak up against racism and discrimination. We should challenge racist comments and behaviors, even if it's uncomfortable. Silence that which perpetuates racism. We should support black-owned businesses in our communities. We should advocate for policies that support economic justice and equity. Donate to black-led organizations. Financially support black-led organizations that are working to address systemic racism, and inequality. It can be done through regular contributions or contributing to certain campaigns and initiatives. We should also use our platforms for good as white people. We have access to platforms and audiences that the Black community may not have. We should use our platforms to amplify Black voices and perspectives, raise awareness about issues affecting the Black community, and promote positive change. Be open to feedback and learning from our mistakes, as we will make mistakes along the way. But it's important to acknowledge them, apologize, and learn from them. We should be open to feedback and willing to change our behavior and perspectives as we continue to learn and grow. Being a better ally to the Black community requires a willingness to listen, learn, and take action. It requires us to use our privilege for good, support Black-owned businesses and communities, and speak up against racism and discrimination. It's up to all of us to work towards a more just and equitable society, and being a better ally is an important step. If you like the content and benefit from it, give me a...
Hello guys, hope you're doing well, and thank you so much for your support, for the love that guys you have shown. You're so much welcome in our commentary hub. Yes, in our today's episode, we are looking back, or we are going deeper on the things of the histories of United States of America, about the Black people in United States of America, whereby now we are believing by knowing the history of Blacks, it is like revealing the history of what America is all about. Guys, we got the clips that we have played on this video, on this channel, and we owe the credit to the owners of these videos, and they're there for us even to know and to have more of what people perceive these things of the history. Is it of the benefit to the Americans citizen? Is it of benefit to any person who is living in America? Is it of the benefit to the Blacks Americans in United States of America? We need to also bring back again the liberation, that which they have been fighting for so long to get. Yes, and by doing so, we will check and look on these videos. We come back with more commentary. Thank you.
This is who we've always been. This country has never been great for everybody. It was designed to benefit white people, specifically 21-year-old land-owning white men. Period. Hard stop. And every demographic or gender outside of that has had to fight against the white man just to be equal. Go back to the Middle Passage. 1.4 million Black people died on ships. Segregation, Jim Crow, women's suffrage movement, Asians in internment camps. We murdered millions of Native Americans and just took their land. We started a war with Mexico and took that land. We took the land from King Kamehameha in Hawaii. All we've done as a white people, we're like locusts. We take and we take and we take and we take. That's what you're seeing right now. A white man taking Venezuela. A white man taking Greenland. A white man probably going after Colombia. Let's be real. Today is the 5th year of January 6th. A white man lied about an election because he didn't like the results. White people went to the U.S. Capitol and beat officers. 5 of them died after that day. 4 from PTSD, and Officer Sitnick died from his injuries the following day. Many officers had heart attacks, crushed vertebrae, PTSD. The entire world saw it. And this country said, yep, that's the guy I want back in power. The rapist, the child molester, the convicted felon, the pedophile, the man who cheats on his wife with the porn star, the guy who asked for the execution of 5 black men, grabbed women by the pussy, grabbed them by the blah, 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 calling women piggy, calling them fat, calling them ugly, telling 30,000 lies, having dinner with Nick Fuentes, And white people in a majority went to the booth and said, this is really hard. It's either that, the guy that talks about Hannibal Lecter and electric sharks and how windmills cause cancer, who stares at the sun without sunglasses, or the black woman, the most qualified candidate in the history of our country. And this country voted like it always does for the most morally bankrupt, unqualified white man just because he's white. And we still today refuse to have the difficult conversation that part of this country was triggered by a black man in the White House instead of out in the fields picking their cotton. So they went back to the plantation owner, what they know. They would rather burn this country to the ground than thrive under a black woman. And white people are walking around like, this isn't who we are. Yeah, it's who we've always been. White privilege has kept you safe from it, has shielded it from you. And even now, while immigrants are being mistreated, good people that work hard, that bust their ass, that are good people, that love this country more than MAGA does, actual patriots that love this country. We're watching women getting dragged through the snow with one arm, losing their pregnancies. We got immigrants in concentration camps losing their lives, getting one meal a day, 2 showers a week. Over 200 U.S. citizens have been arrested because they're racially profiling people. And we're just sitting around, well, I don't want to talk politics because I don't want to upset a friend. And we're doing what we've always done as white people. Going right back into our privilege because it doesn't affect me. And you think that somehow, because you participated in a No Kings protest in April, July, and October on a Saturday outside of working hours, that you deserve a participation trophy because you did something. And you woke up and you made signs and you high-fived and you went to watch Netflix, or you went to a baseball game, or you went to a football game. And what did you do? Did you go on a general strike? Oh no, I can't do that. I can't afford to. That's too uncomfortable. Have you stopped paying taxes? Oh no, that's too uncomfortable. Have you posted on social media? Oh no, I don't want to affect work. I don't want to upset Uncle Bob because he might talk to me during Christmas. Did you stop spending on Black Friday? No, I can't do that. I need the discounts for Christmas. What are you willing to do? Because I haven't seen enough people that look like me willing to be uncomfortable. That's the problem. We will not remember the voices of our enemies, rather the silence of our friends. And right now, that's what white people are doing. You, white people, including myself, are responsible for this through our silence. Just like the 3 officers stood by while George Floyd was murdered, we're sitting by and watching it happen because we think that our privilege will keep us safe. You're complicit in it, and you're complicit in it, and you're complicit in it. I don't do politics means I have white privilege and I'm going to hide behind it as long as I can because it doesn't affect me. Don't wave your gold cross at me and say you love your neighbor as yourself when the only person you care about is yourself. I do this because I was named after Paul, and I consider myself an imperfect person in all aspects, but I consider myself a person of faith. And I might not know all the answers to everything, but I know one thing. If Jesus was here and saw what's happening in this country, I'll be goddamned if he wouldn't be out there protesting every day. He would be on a strike. Every day, he would be turning over tables in churches and synagogues and the Congress and the Senate. And he would do everything he could to stand up for justice. Until this country decides to do that, you're going to get what you deserve. This man is doing what white men always do, is they take and they take and they take and they take. He's going to take Venezuela. He's going to take Cuba. He's going to take Greenland. And we're just going to sit by and say, oh, let's wait for the midterms. It doesn't matter who wins the midterms. Why do you still think the Democrats are going to save us? They are not up for this fight. This is not about politics. It's about white supremacy. For too long, we thought that we made progress. We never did. What we're seeing is the remnants of the lost cause. The only difference, other than the year, is that Donald Trump, the rapist pedophile, told them, be who you are. Come out of the closet. Leave your white hoods at home and put on your red hats. I'll support you. And that's what you're seeing. That's why you see white nationalists all over the country now, because they're emboldened by the racist, white supremacist grand wizard in the White House. This isn't rocket science. And everybody's saying, who's going to save us? We're not willing to be uncomfortable. Nobody's coming to save you. It doesn't matter if a Democrat wins. It's not going to stop what's wrong with this country. Donald Trump is a symptom of white supremacy. It'll be J.D. Vance next, or some other far-right Pharisee, some other white nationalist that's afraid of a white minority. It's going to be somebody else. Until we fix the root of this problem, we will never be a great country for everybody. And we've got here because we have propagandized generations of people in this country, and we've told ourselves that we're the best of the best of the best of the best, and it's a lie. We raise our kids in American flag diapers, and we eat our freedom Wheaties before we go to school, and we talk about freedom and guns and Second Amendment and bald eagles and more freedom, and throw in God once in a while and sprinkle in a gold cross or some other symbol of nationalism. And we go to baseball games and we worship the flag, and we go to school and we worship the flag. And before we leave the house, we feed our pet bald eagle, and we get in our truck and put on 400,000 million American flags because we don't want our neighbors to forget that we're patriots. And then we polish the Constitution, and then we don't put on seatbelts because we're patriots. We don't want to be confined by safety. Screw that. Yeah, we're anti-vaxxers. Yeah, we're patriots. And then you turn up God Bless America so the entire state of California can hear you, and you go to work. But first, you got to go in your house and get 500 billion guns and put them in your back seat because you're a patriot. And it's nationalism. Patriotism is doing what I'm doing and standing up for the people that the flag represents. I was at a protest at an ICE facility in Las Vegas last year. And it was interesting. I was there, and it was almost all Latinos and Latinas. They were having their chicle and their quinceañeras. And you know what? They had an American flag that was half American and half Mexican. I was like, you know what? That's what America is. And at that moment, I knew that those people, whether they were immigrants, whether they were citizens, I didn't care. They were good people. That's what I care about. They loved this country more than MAGA did. Because MAGA wants people to love this country the way that they want, which is white, 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 white. They're stuck on symbolism and nationalism. And the people on the right have done a damn good job of indoctrinating a bunch of uneducated, racist white people in the South to weaponize religion through abortion and being gay, that the liberals are the enemy and they're all going to hell and they're evil. And it's been a lie. But yet somehow when they vote for a rapist and a convicted felon and a pedophile, somehow, hey, no one's perfect. And that's the hypocrisy, because that's what it is. It has never been about God or Jesus. And I'll remind you that the KKK and the lynchings didn't let black people sit in church. In fact, they would lynch black people and leave them outside hanging from the tree after the Sunday service, and then all the white people would be in their nice clothes and take pictures because, you know, nothing says we're a Christian nation. But that's the lie that they told people, that we're a Christian nation. Lynchings, Jim Crow, segregation, tearing out the fetuses of black women, using babies for bait for alligators. The Middle Passage, where 1.4 million people died. The Trail of Tears, Wounded Knee, Asian internment camps. black people not sitting in church or same schools, but hey, we're a Christian nation. But what that means is that we're a white nation. That's what it means. When you hear traditional family values, that means you could be a white man that rapes women and molests little girls and be president, because that's traditional family values. White. When are we going to finally face the original sin of this country? We didn't make progress during the civil rights movement. We suppressed it behind a dam. And this plantation owner in the White House, this grand wizard, has opened that dam. And it's so full that the water's coming over the top of the dam, and it's about to crack open. And the Stephen Millers and the Steve Bannons of the world and the Marco Rubio who wants to be close to whiteness and the Lindsey Grahams, they're all going to kiss up to the white man, because he is their Hail Mary to save their version of traditional family values from the non-white people taking it over. When are we going to address it, people? It was never about the price of eggs or gas. They were never going to vote for the black woman. And when you look at the Zohran Mamdani race, the only demographic that did vote for him, white people. Harrison Trump, white people. Go look at the early polling for Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico. I know it's shocking, but the majority of people that aren't voting for her, white men and women and Latino men, because there is a hint of misogyny in those people. They're not a monolith, but you see the same demographics vote for the man again and again and again. And for those of you that are still not believing that this is a sexist, misogynist country, why don't you ask yourself this question? Why is it that half of our country are women? 50%. And in 249 years, we've never had a woman president. That we would rather have a pedophile, rapist, convicted felon, white man as the president than the most qualified black woman. It's misogyny. Maintaining the white male patriarchy is more valuable than morality and decency, integrity, and honesty. And I voted for John McCain, and I voted for Barack Obama. I even voted for Ross Perot. I have voted all across the aisle. They were decent people. I had respect for them. They had integrity, decency, kindness. I would have been fine with either one of them winning. But what we've done now is completely abdicated all that for white supremacy. And that's a damn shame. It's time that we finally have this conversation. Have a white day.
People don't want to acknowledge that the black community are the chosen people, because let's get deep into this, because in reality they have the knowledge that most people don't have. Like, the only reason why people know how to farm is because of the black community. The only reason why we have the music that we have today is because of the black community. There wouldn't be no rock or metal if it wasn't for blues and jazz. There wouldn't be pop music if it wasn't for disco. There's a lot of things that they created that white people never did. White people really don't have that deep of knowledge. It's either stolen ideas or they're bought. Let's be real. What did white people really invent? You could say Tesla from Elon Musk, but he didn't make that. It was a stolen idea. If you go read what he did, he literally stole the whole business. You could say Trump, but what did Trump do? Stolen ideas, copied somebody else's ideas, just like his speeches. It's like a lot of white people just copy people. I mean, look at the dances on here. Who created those dances? The black community. And that's why this app's so boring right now, because it's not because all this stuff that's going on and the negativity. The black community literally just took their energy away. That's why this app was positive, because a lot of the white people were copying their dance move, copying this, copying that, and they stopped doing it, stopped posting on here, because none of you will give them the credit or the acknowledgement that they created dance move or that idea. Before this land was taken, white people had no clue what the fuck to do. They were taught their language, they were taught how to farm, they were taught how to season their food that they still don't know how to do. That's another thing, seasoning. All their favorite foods, barbecuing. You love the barbecue, right? That was the black community's idea. This is why they are chosen. They have the knowledge that most people don't have. There's a possibility there is white people who are chosen because let's face the facts. What happened during the Roman times and the slavery and all this other stuff, the black women were getting raped. So they were having their children. So there might be a bigger chance than we think that a lot of white people might have possibly a little black in them. That's why white people are jealous of them, because they know they have no creative ideas. They don't know how to cook, some of them. They don't know how to do much anything. They have to copy and paste everything the black community does because they have no ideals of their own, or they're jealous of their looks, jealous of their ding-dongs, whatever. Because their light is shining more than white people's. And honestly, the Bible says there's antichrists everywhere. The Antichrist, blah, blah, blah. But white people are the Antichrist. You have no Christ consciousness whatsoever. If anything, you try to erase Christ consciousness. I mean, look at all of you right now in this day and age. But yeah, none of you has Christ consciousness. Most white people are full of hate. And a lot of black people are full of love. How do I know this? Because the black community treated me better than my own race. Let's just face the facts right there. The black community has treated me better than the white people. Back to the Antichrist though. You had Jim Jones. You have Trump. You have a bunch of white people always saying they're trying to save the world. And they always don't. Those are Antichrists. Always white people doing it. But yeah, most of our knowledge that we know today, the music we have today, the foods we have today, is all from the black community's ideas, which is Christ consciousness, and God gave that knowledge for a reason.
Also, what the fuck's this Black National Anthem about?
I'm so glad you asked. The Black National Anthem, also called Lift Every Voice and Sing, was written as a poem by NAACP leader James Weldon Johnson in 1900. His brother, John Rosamond Johnson, composed the music for the lyrics. A choir of 500 schoolchildren at the segregated Stanton School, where James Weldon Johnson was principal, first performed the song in public in Jacksonville, Florida, to commemorate Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And at the turn of the 20th century, Johnson's lyrics eloquently captured the solemn yet hopeful appeal for the liberty of Black Americans. Set against the religious invocation of God and the promise of freedom, the song was later adopted by the NAACP and prominently used as a rallying cry during the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s.
We're like literally going backwards as a country with racism. We're not going forwards.
Well, on this, I would agree with you. I think we are going backwards in some ways, but I think you and I have very different reasons as to why.
The regular national anthem is for everyone that's an American citizen. Black people and white people and Asian people, everyone.
So while I understand this argument on its surface, you have to also put the national anthem in the context of history. You mentioned citizenship. It's very important to remember that not everyone has been a citizen of the United States throughout history. So again, I think history is very important when you think about contemporary experiences. So yes, while in theory, everyone in the United States who was born in the United States is an American citizen and therefore afforded the rights of an American citizen, there are systems in place. Despite what our individual and interpersonal dynamics might be, there are still systems in place that make it very difficult for some U.S. citizens to have a similar lived experience than other American citizens. So just think about even the education system in those K through 12 schools that you attend or attended. Think about the racial dynamics of your K through 12. Who was at your institution? Who was able to have access to new textbooks, to facilities, to computers, to high-level courses that would prepare them for college-level work, right? Those are the types of systemic questions that we must ask ourselves about citizenship and experience of citizenship in the United States. I understand how this logic of thinking makes sense to someone if you haven't thought about the context in history and also haven't thought about the lived experience of those who have had to endure systems that were not designed for them. So while it might be very easy and tempting to say in 2024 that the national anthem is for everyone, do remember that it was written at a time when not everyone was included. And in fact, some people that were on U.S. soil were not considered human.
The Black national anthem is only for Black people.
False. It is not just for Black people. I think that type of thinking is what prevents us from moving forward. I think it's very easy to assume a type of mental segregation on these types of issues and these types of things, right? As folks have said, right, Black history is for everyone. Black history is American history. If you're truly committed to anti-racism, anti-Black racism in particular, then you are willing to do the hard work and to be made to feel uncomfortable with ideas and concepts that on their surface seem contradictory or seem very triggering for you. But I would encourage you to ask yourself why you feel that way. Why do you feel so defensive, so angry, so frustrated by the things that you are learning about? What is it about a Black national anthem that is so threatening? Could it be that perhaps it is making you question your own worldview, making you question what the national anthem is, because you've been taught all these years that it is the one only true national anthem, right? That we're all one under this national anthem. But even the national anthem that you know and are familiar with and sing along with, you only sing one verse of it. You don't sing the whole thing. So even you have not been afforded the true history and the true context of that song and that anthem that you sing at major sporting events, not thinking about what it means in terms of social programming.
Yet, if there were a white national anthem, it would be racist. It would be so fucking racist.
If you look at the actual lyrics of the entire Star Spangled Banner, it is racist because it was written in a time in which Black people were not seen as human beings. They were seen as property. So again, we have to put things in context and we have to be mindful of history. I think what really is bubbling under the surface of this commentary is that when we say the national anthem, we're not calling it the white national anthem. There's already an assumed neutrality within the national anthem because we only sing certain parts of it. So the racial dynamics and the racial context of the time in which it was written is hidden and remains hidden. And what is also being hidden is how it served whiteness and white identity in the time in which it was written to reinscribe power and oppression over Black people. That is what we mean when we say racism. We are talking about power dynamics and who has power in society. And at the time of the national anthem, it sure wasn't Black folks that had the social power.
If we had a White History Month, so racist.
And I hear this comment every time February rolls around. Why don't we have White History Month? Honey, I'm here to tell you that everything that you have been learning in K through 12, even in the social dynamics of your interpersonal relationships, has been reinscribing whiteness as an identity and as an idea and as a mode of being. I know that that might be very difficult to hear because it remains invisible and usually goes unnamed. There are some resources that I would highly encourage you to read, such as Joe Fagan's The White Racial Frame. I would encourage you to look at Cheryl Harris's Whiteness as Property. There's also some text out there that talks about whiteness as a bubble, as a social bubble, right? In which you never have to confront your own racial identity. Because if you are white, you too have a racial identity. But with that, it often goes unnamed. And when it is explicitly named, it is a reminder that you too have a race. And I know that can be hard and that can be troubling, but part of doing the work and part of moving forward on these issues is reconciling with who we are and starting with who we are and being okay with who we are and not seeing other people finding pride in who they are as a threat to our existence.
This is illogical. It does not make any goddamn sense. Yet we can't say it's racist to us. We're going backwards, guys. We're all supposed to be one. We're all supposed to celebrate one national anthem.
I hope at this point I've made myself pretty clear that even though it sounds really nice to want to celebrate one national anthem because that would be so much easier and less complicated and messy, the reality is when we look at the context in which that national anthem was written, it was written at a time when only certain people were considered American citizens. Only certain people of certain racial identity, certain gender, expression and identity, and certain property owning identity. When I hear phrases like, why can't we just celebrate one? Why can't we just be one? Why can't we just all get along? I think what's really being said, without saying, is why can't we all just be white? Why can't we just all be white heterosexual men? Well, because some of us aren't, and we ought to be able to be who we are, and we ought to have the space to be able to express who we are. And it's not a threat. And if you feel that it's a threat, you need to ask yourself some deeper questions, starting with, why does it feel like a threat? And what do I do with these feelings? And how can I navigate these feelings without it being a zero?
But the truth is that so-called white people don't know their history either. Their history in America or their history in Europe. Americans generally don't know history, which is incredibly useful when you consider the fact that history repeats itself. It's incredibly useful to keep the entire population in a state of amnesia, so that the whole country operates like the main character in that film Memento, you know? So you keep doing the same things that you've always done, and you never understand that you're actually doing the things that history has already judged to be crimes. You understand? You can do it as if there's no context, as if there's no history, as if there's no pattern. That's the whole point of approaching current events from an ahistorical perspective. You don't want anyone to see the pattern. You want to be able to do things that have already been condemned by history, but you want to keep doing them anyway, as if you don't know that they're contemptible. You don't know that they are condemned actions. Just like Donald Trump now invoking the Alien Enemies Act in reference to mass deportations and so on. Okay, this is the same act that put tens of thousands of Japanese Americans into internment camps in World War II, and for which the United States government eventually had to provide compensation and eventually had to even apologize for doing it. You see, it is something completely contemptible that you did, but you want to repeat it. So you forget your history. You forget history so you can repeat history without blame. Both so-called white people and so-called black people in America don't know their history. Both have been told lies about the past, about their respective pasts. And the only reason for that is for the purpose of maintaining the continuity of the contemptible reality of how that society operates. Amnesia and fictional histories serve as a preventative measure against change, against reform, against rehabilitation. America chooses to live like it's in the movie Groundhog Day. You know, you pretend that only today exists over and over and over again. And because of this forced amnesia, because of this deliberate suppression of historical awareness, the people in America don't even recognize when they're reliving their own past. They think that they're facing something new. They think that they're responding to some unprecedented crisis every time. If you have no recollection where the road leads that you're on, then you'll keep walking it again and again, never realizing that it has already led you into disaster after disaster, dozens of times before. And this is exactly the condition that the rulers in America want, that the elite of America want, not just for black people, not just for so-called white people, but for everyone. Because the most effective way to ensure that a crime continues is to make sure that it is never recognized as a crime. To make sure that every time you commit that crime, it feels like the first time. You know? So when Trump talks about invoking the Alien Enemies Act, most Americans don't hear the echoes of history from that. They don't hear the voices of the Japanese Americans who were dragged from their homes and put behind barbed wire for years and years. They don't remember that that country had to apologize for doing exactly what they're about to do again. The American mind resets every morning. And that's the perfect condition for those in power. Because if people really understood history, then they would recognize that nothing about the American system is accidental. Every aspect of it, from its racial hierarchies to its economic disparities to its unjust foreign policies, is simply the continuation of an old script, a script that has played out again and again, always leading to oppression, always leading to exploitation, always leading to war, always leading to misery. And this is why in America history isn't taught. Fiction is taught, legends are taught, myths are taught, but not history. Because real history would be dangerous. Real history would break the illusion and potentially break the cycle. So-called white people in America know a version of history. They know a story. They know a narrative that has been carefully crafted to shape how they see themselves, how they see their ancestors, how they see their nations and their place in the world, and how they see everyone else. And this ignorance, this deliberate miseducation that they have imposed upon their own people allows the same crimes to continue. What most white people in America and Europe believe about their history is not history at all. It's mythology, designed to produce a specific kind of person. A person who does not feel guilty, a person who does not feel accountable, a person who does not feel responsible for ever changing anything because they don't think they're doing anything wrong. They're taught that their ancestors were pioneers, their ancestors were explorers and builders of civilization, that they've brought progress and democracy and enlightenment to the world. They hear about the Renaissance, they hear about the Industrial Revolution, they hear about the Age of Discovery, and so forth and so on. And not about enslavement, not about genocide, not about the theft, not about the destruction that their people are responsible for. They're not taught that their prosperity was built on unimaginable suffering. They're not taught that their systems of government, their financial empires, their very sense of national identity are all rooted in exploitation. They don't know about the crimes. They don't know the real legacy of their people. And so they don't change. They don't have to change because they don't even realize what they need to correct. You know, when we look at colonialism, for example, the history that's taught in Western schools is usually an abstraction. Colonization is framed as something that it just sort of happened a long time ago, you know, something that was maybe unfortunate, but it was inevitable, and ultimately it represented progress, and there were many beneficial things to come from it. Never mind the millions of Africans who died in the Congo Free State under King Leopold. Most white Americans have never heard of them. Never mind the Bengal famine of 1943 when millions of Indians starved to death due to British policies. They don't even know about it. The fact that the American police forces evolved from slave patrols, they don't know about that either. And they're not any more informed about the ongoing crimes, like the pillage of African resources today, the economic neocolonialism that keeps entire regions of the world impoverished, the exploitation of labor in the global south. These aren't relics of history. That's the present day reality of what your people are doing. But the story that white people are told does not include those realities, or else it packages those realities deceitfully and dishonestly. They package them dishonestly and deceitfully in the past just like they do now. The irony is that when they're confronted with the truth, many of these people will react defensively, you know. I didn't do that. That was in the past. Why should I feel guilty? But this reaction in and of itself reveals how little they're really understanding. It's not about guilt. It's about responsibility. You know, if a person inherits a stolen house, they may not have stolen it themselves, but they still live in it. And if they refuse to acknowledge where that house came from or how it came into their possession, if they insist that that house is rightfully theirs because the crime happened a long time ago, well, then they're complicit because the theft is ongoing. The crime never really stopped. So when people don't know their history, they cannot recognize when history is repeating itself and when history is actually just a continuum into the present. This is why so-called white people in America can watch their government arm and support genocide in Gaza, bomb Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and so on, and actually believe when they say it's for the purpose of security. They don't see the colonial mindset at work. That's why they can see corporations, for example, Western corporations, strip mine Africa for resources and not connect that to the centuries of plunder that came before. This is why they can hear about mass incarceration, about police brutality and systemic racism in the United States, and not understand that these are not new problems. These are just new forms of an old system. These are new manifestations of the same system. And this is why they don't resist, why they don't challenge the structures that continue to exploit and continue to oppress. Because they don't even recognize those systems as continuations of the age-old exploitation and oppression. The truth is, white people have been colonized too. Not physically, not economically, but psychologically. They've been conditioned to believe in a history that never happened. A history where they were always the heroes. A history where they were never the villains, and where their victims were villains. And as long as they live inside that fiction, well, they'll continue to perpetuate the same crimes of their past, even without realizing it. Which just means that we're not even talking about past crimes. We're talking about ongoing crimes from the past until today. Like I said, it's a continuum. If there's ever going to be any real change, if there's ever going to be any hope for justice, then so-called white people have to actually learn your history. Not the history that makes you feel proud and makes you feel good, that makes you feel comfortable, but real history, the history that makes you uncomfortable, the history that you've denied all this time. And only when white people know their real history, really know it, then maybe they can begin to take the first steps towards repairing the damage that that history caused. The damage that it caused to millions upon millions of people all around the world, including themselves. I mean, Americans, particularly so-called white Americans, you're all like the child of the BTK killer, trying to come to terms with the fact that you were raised by a monster, who you always thought was a good and upright man. If Americans in general really understood their history, well, they would know that the United States government has only ever used fear as a weapon against them. And every war that America has ever been involved in was only justified by lies. And every act of domestic repression has only ever been framed as being necessary for the sake of security. They would know that the anti-immigration movements, the anti-Muslim ban and so forth, and all of their surveillance programs, it's not new. It's the same thing. It's just rebranded versions of old crimes. There's absolute continuity. And the only reason that you don't know that is because you have no actual understanding of your own history. Yes, if Americans truly understood their history, they would not be so easily manipulated. They would not be so easily controlled. They would not be so quick to repeat the wrongs of the past, or rather to continue the wrongs of the past. But that's exactly why history is hidden from them. I mean, it's trite but true. There is nothing more powerful than knowledge. There's nothing more dangerous to a corrupt system than a population that remembers. And that's why our mission must be to educate people and to awaken people and to reconnect people with the reality of their own history, the good and the bad. Because when you understand your history, then you'll understand your enemy. Because they've been doing the same thing throughout history. And when you understand your enemy, then you'll understand how to defeat them. You'll understand how to oppose them. Because you've got an enemy who keeps you in a state of amnesia and a state of fake implanted memories. You know, every time you open your eyes, your enemy is right there in front of you telling you that he's your friend. And because you don't remember anything, you believe him. You understand? The whole country is getting their drink spiked. Everyone in that country is getting roofied. And the one who spikes your drink and the one who abuses you when you're in your numb and unconscious state is the one sitting next to you in the morning when you come to, holding your hand, your protector. Oh, it's insidious. Uncle Sam is a serial killer. The son of Sam's got nothing on Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is the most prolific, psychopathic, diabolical, demonic mass murderer in history. I mean, look at that poster again, that Uncle Sam poster, that I Want You poster. Think about that. You would think that a character who's supposed to represent the great democratic America would actually be asking the people, what do you want? Not demanding, I want you to go off into the meat grinder of World War I and World War II. Over 500,000 American soldiers killed in Europe and in Asia, thousands of miles from the United States. And then basically some 20-something years later, the same message is repeated. And it's heralded as a great quote. It's heralded as a great statement from John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Why? That's not how this works. Talk about gaslighting. Imagine if someone said that in a relationship. You know, I need you to do this and that and the other, and don't even ask me about what you need me to do for you. No, your government, your power structure hates you. But worse than hating you, they don't even respect you. And like I said, a major reason for that is that they have perfected the process of completely wiping out your memory. But the power structure has a memory. So you understand, that's what's really meant by history repeating itself. People think that this is some sort of natural law. No, it's not natural law. It's just the unchanged, consistent behavior of a predatory power structure. It's the law of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Meaning they've been doing the same thing for a very long time. And the system works for them. So they have no reason to change it, and they never will change it until you change. And that's why they want to make sure that you never know what's going on. They want to make sure that you never know what's been going on. And why they keep you basically like a crackhead. I'm serious. Just like a crackhead. The American population, you know, is like a crackhead. Extreme desperation for short-term gratification. Complete memory blackouts. No recall of past consequences of their actions. You know, mood swings, volatile, erratic, can't cope with reality. And you'll sell your dignity just to get some relief. That's why they don't respect you. The same way that a drug dealer doesn't respect a crackhead. Because they can treat you any kind of way. And you'll accept it. You'll accept it as long as you can get a hit of propaganda, a hit of entertainment, a hit of distraction, or what have you. Anything to just help you forget the reality that you live in. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the condition of a people will not change until they move to change it themselves. And that's why they've neutralized you, because otherwise history might not repeat itself. Because they're the ones who are making history repeat itself by just continuing to do what they've always done. You understand what I'm saying? See, this isn't cyclical, it's constant, uninterrupted. The oppression, the violence, the exploitation, the predation. This is all static, unchanging. You know, you say history repeats itself, it makes it sound like you're talking about a cycle, but it's not a cycle. It's not even a loop. It's a straight line, and it has never swerved, not even once. It's one scene. It's the same scene, year after year, decade after decade, and all they ever do is maybe change the lighting to make it look different, to make it look new, but nothing has changed. But you won't know that as long as you have no memory, as long as you have no actual memory. Not the implanted fake memories of the past that they put in your mind, but a real memory, a real knowledge of history. You'll actually think that you're looking at something new because you don't remember. You don't remember that it's always been this way. And that's why they want you to be so desperate to forget. You know, it's like they say, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So the best way to be able to continue negative and destructive behavior into the future is to try to falsify your history. I mean, most people don't even care about history in America. That's a fact. They're already just ignorant. But the ones who do have an interest in history, they're fed a fictitious history. So they're even worse than someone who's just ignorant. They're even worse than someone who knows nothing. Because it's actually better to just know nothing than to believe something false. The one who doesn't know anything can at least learn. They're at least empty, and information can be put in that emptiness. Whereas someone who already believes something false, thinks he already has the knowledge, thinks he already has the information, and that makes him immune to learning. But then, of course, there's also the fact that the history is so horrific, the history is so brutal, that there's already a built-in incentive to deny or to dismiss it. Because it can be absolutely soul-crushing to try to come to terms with. Like I said, it's like finding out that your parent is the BTK killer. How do you process that? Most people would just reflexively deny horrible realities because they've already built their whole life around the assumption that the reality that they live in is not horrible. You've been drinking blood your whole life thinking it's cherry Kool-Aid. You know, the torch of the Statue of Liberty isn't a guiding light, it's an arsonist's weapon. That's what burned down villages in Vietnam. That's what set fire to Iraq and to Afghanistan. And that's what lit burning crosses all over America. You've been living in an alternative universe. So-called white Americans are like Manchurian candidates, committing or being accomplice to heinous crimes decade after decade after decade, insulated by the hypnotic state of the false version of history that they believe. That's why I've said so repeatedly, your so-called civilization has betrayed you. Your so-called civilization has duped you. They got you to sign off on policies that they told you were for the protection of liberty and justice, but were actually policies for mass murder, crimes against humanity, war crimes, savagery, and enslavement, all for the profit of others. Others who view you as nothing but useful idiots. And now you're incriminated. Now you're accomplices. Now you're taking the fall. But you've got no one to blame but yourselves. But you know what the biggest fraud is? You know what the biggest control strategy is that they use? It's not entertainment. It's not drugs. It's not mass distraction. It's not pornography. It's not even their falsification of history. The biggest strategy that they use to keep you weak and to keep you neutralized is teaching you.
We never intended them to be anything other than a slave. But they began to grow in number and in power, and eventually they fought their way to some freedom. So we became even more cruel, and to keep our black Americans down, we lynched. But yet they rose. So then we used the welfare system, the criminal justice system, to keep them down, to contain them, to destroy them. But yet they rose, and they're rising. Then we built prisons and jails to hold them. Yet they rose. And so now we are doing exactly what the Pharaoh did at the end, sending out a decree: kill them. So until we admit that when we wrote this Constitution that all men are created equal, that we never intended to include our black brothers and sisters, our nation may end up facing exactly what the Egyptians faced when they refused to let God's people go. So I'm going to say this to my white fellow Americans, that the bloodshed that is on its way is not on the hands of our fellow black Americans, but is on our hands. We are the ones that are refusing to let God's people go. We are the ones that are refusing to acknowledge that we do not value our black brothers and sisters as equal individuals or equal Americans as us white men. And to my black brothers and sisters, the racial issues, as I've said, have been there from the very foundation. But why do we see it more? Because there's a shifting. See, us white men have been at the head since the foundation. But we've had a black president. And you know, we've done everything in our power to keep him from really changing things. Now we have another minority rising to the top, a white female. What does that say? Those of us who are white men who have been at the head are now starting to see and fear that we are going to become the tail. And we know what we've done to you. And so now we're fearful that you're going to do to us what we have done to you. But I will say this. I've lived in a black community for 23 years. I've never been treated the way that this country has treated my black Americans. So I call out my white Americans to say we better heed, repent, acknowledge, and change. Because if we don't, I just want to again say this. The bloodshed that we...
White people who I'm sorry, I keep talking to my crackers today. I just keep seeing a lot of white people who are afraid and don't know what to do. And instead of reprimanding you, I'm going to educate you right now. We're in Black History Month. Black history is American history, and we need to know it. And I'm going to tell you about one of my biggest heroes, one of the reasons that I use my voice the best of my abilities. And I am not going to do her justice by any means with all of her accomplishments, so I highly recommend you look her up. Her name's Ida B. Wells, though, and she is one of the most fantastic people in history. Let's start with the fact that she was freed under the Emancipation Proclamation. So her worldview was created under slavery. She was a journalist that actively reported on lynchings and called them what they were, which was public executions. That's very, very crucial. She worked at newspapers that were overthrown by white mobs. She also was the leader of, I believe it was called the League of Women Colored Voters. Now, you see, when we were fighting for women's suffrage in the 20s, you know of two names. Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. They were mega fucking racist, though. The reason why they wanted to fight for white women's suffrage, and I say white women's suffrage specifically, is because they were angry that a black man would have the ability to vote before they did. In comes Ida B. Wells and the League of Colored Women Voters to the Women's Suffrage March to give the Women's Suffrage March numbers. And you know what Elizabeth and Susan said? They looked at her and they said, go stand in the back. Then they tried to negotiate down and said, oh, we don't want to get women of color the right to vote. We will get white women the right to vote, and then we'll get it for y'all later. That's what they said. That's what they were trying to negotiate down. And then Ida B. Wells said, well, then you're not going to have our numbers, and we're going to click on out of here. So Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were like, fine, we'll accept you, and then we all have the right to vote. Wow. Wow, what happens when we all stand together intersectionally instead of letting racism divide us for some fucking reason? How beautiful. But if you're afraid right now, as a white woman that's known the comforts of white life in America, and you're afraid to speak out on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok about ICE, you got to check your privilege right now. You've never experienced violence because of your opinions. You've never experienced that violence because of the color of your skin. Please check your privilege right now. Then go get a cup of coffee and start talking some shit. Because if there's one thing I know about us white women is when we want to talk shit, that's what the fuck we're going to do. So I hope this inspired you to talk some shit, be more intersectional in your approach, and stop letting these white supremacists make you afraid.
The truth is, I think we're going to get out of this politically toxic cycle. You know why? Because white people are getting affected. White people are being affected. White people are being killed. White people are losing their land. White people are in debt. Those eggs didn't go down. But I also think that white people are going to put us right back in the shit. Give it a generation, give it a few years. They're gonna get that, you know, that amnesia thing they get all the time and put us right back in the shit. The moment that things seem like equality is coming into the picture, they're gonna say, oh, they're catching up. Put them right back in the shit. Because there's no way you gave the country to a 34-count felon that was impeached twice, that was accused of rape, got to pay off a corn star, right? Like, understand. Somebody said that they will date their own daughter, right? You gave that simply because you did not want to vote for a black woman. So understand, we may get out of this political toxic cycle, but white folks are going to put us right back in this shit at some point. And that's the conversation I want to have. What are you planning to do after this? Are you going to now advocate for other groups of people? Are you now going to educate the people around you? Are you now going to pass down generation to generation accurate information about history? Or are you going to get that amnesia thing that you always get the moment that things start to seem like they're leveling out?
When you look at systemic racism, you're looking at trends that have affected the wealth gap between the races historically in the United States. This is not about a person being a racist or your grandma being a racist. It has to do with what the economy looked like for white persons and black persons historically in this country. Back during the time of the Civil War, the white folks had 56 times more wealth on average than a black person. So it was 56 to 1. Just 10 years later, in 1870, after Reconstruction, that gap went from 56 to 1 to 23 to 1. Pretty dramatic improvement in 10 years. The reason for that market improvement is that while black people were now allowed to purchase land and assets, so black wealth was going up, simultaneously white wealth was coming down because what was a huge part of their wealth? Slaves. human beings that they were no longer allowed to own. By 1900, the gap had closed all the way to 11 to 1. The average white person had 11 times more wealth than the average black person. And then it stalled out. And the reason it stalled out is because black people were still being discriminated against. They didn't have the same access to credit, if any access to credit. Legislative attempts at narrowing the gap were shot down, trying to finish narrowing the gap were shot down, like the 40 acres and a mule thing that never got passed. They faced widespread discrimination in education. The schools were still segregated and they weren't getting the best funding and they weren't getting the best teachers. They were discriminated against in the workforce. Now from 1900, when it was 11 to 1, to 1960, over 60 years, the gap squeezed a little bit smaller to 8 to 1. So for every black family that had $10,000 in total assets, the average white family had 80,000 in total assets, okay? And how did we go from 11 to 1 to 8 to 1? Well, a couple things happened. FDR made it illegal to discriminate against black workers, but only for purposes of the military and government positions. But still, every little bit helps. And then also, you had World War I and World War II. So many white men left the American workforce that black men were finally able to start moving up into higher paid positions. That doesn't mean they were paid the same as the white person who had previously done that job, but they were being paid more than they were previously, and they were getting access to higher skilled work. So then by the 1980s, the gap had closed to 5 to 1. And what was helping close the gap? Civil rights that had taken place between 1965 and 1980. Fair Housing Act, the federal minimum wage that did not discriminate. So those things were helping close that gap just a little bit. So that takes us up to 1980, but what has happened in the last 45 years? We were at 5 to 1 gap. How much have we closed since then? None. In the last 45 years, we've gone backwards. So we are now at a 6 to 1 gap. The average white family has 6 times more wealth than the average black family. And why is that happening? Well, because wealth compounds. It's not just about who has the ability to earn X salary. It's that the white families were starting with more wealth, more property, more stocks, bonds, etc. And they're able to compound that wealth. Whereas if the black and brown populations are starting without those assets, they don't have the ability to compound. They end up having to spend what they earn. They have to consume the majority of the income that they're earning just to sustain a living. This isn't about blaming an individual. It's not about vilifying people. What it is about is exploring and understanding the economics behind why we have that gap so that we can address those things with policy moving forward.
And as we can see how the white people perceive the things of the history of black American, and there are some who has they have accepted and they have known what the black Americans went through. It's like writing the history is like writing the future of their own. It's something which is going around, what they are telling out to ignore. It might be, and it might happen back to the citizen or to the white Americans, and they are very careful about what is happening, and they are ready now to learn and to read about the history of black Americans. And you can see they have come up with this truth of what and how the black Americans went through in their survival there in United States of America. For one, they were not looked, or they were not accepted, or they didn't go there as visitors. They didn't go they wanted now to liberate. They didn't go there as colonials. That's what I mean. They went there as slaves. And being a slave, it has been denied a lot. Yes, and they suffered a lot through the enslavement system that was indulged on them, whereby many are complaining, or many have been saying what they went through, though it was something which now they have not looked back and not forget, because they might get themselves back in the same situation. And there have been people who have been supporting the history of black Americans. The white Americans, they have been supporting. There are some who has been supporting the history of black Americans, and there are still others who are still in denial. But one thing is clear, that ignoring is no longer an option. It is very clear that ignoring is no more an optional, because the question is, if you not get to know the history of black Americans or the story of black Americans, which other story are we supposed to know? and which other story are supposed to be told? And that's the question that we have right now in this channel, that we are listening to these stories on the opinion of these people for us to know more and for us to learn more of the history of Black Americans. And I hope that this will reach many people now, like to know where they have come from and to know that the price that they paid for them to be where they are, and they will not forget that they might get in the same point again, because by doing the history you just know the pattern and you know that this thing or the system that has been kept for us, they are putting or they are taking us back to where we have come from. So some see it as an essential. Yes, there are people who are seeing it like it's very important, it's very essential to be teaching the struggles, achievement and contributions of Black Americans in United States of America. And by their history and by their history of Black Americans, it's also a step. It is a step of knowing what equality is all about. Yes, by reading their history, by knowing the history of Black Americans, it's like you have just opened your spirit, or you have just opened yourself to know the step of, or the thing, or the importance, or the importance of being equal, the things of the equality. And now, now Black and white Americans, they will not be divided, or they will just sit down and know that they had and they have the same enemy. Because when they're looking back at the history, we can see these white people, even by them coming there, they were not indigenous people in the United States of America, yes, but they came there as colonials, yes, and by doing whatever they did, they oppressed people and they took their land and whatever they did, which that was the culture by then. But still, they have to know that and to have this understanding, like they settled in United States of America, they settled, that's their home, and the equality should be for us all, for them all, for Blacks and for the white. There will be no separation whatsoever. Yes, but otherwise pushback. Yes, of course we can get people, we get some white people, white Americans who are pushing back, claiming that teaching the history is political. Yes, because there are people who think like the history, once it is revealed, there are people who will, the elite or the rich people who has been controlling, or who has been there controlling, manipulating and making people to be their slaves even now, because many people are not liberated also. And this elite or this group of rich people in the world, they're the one who hinders the history to be told, because once people knows their power, once people know that what they belong, and once people know that the equality of any other person, or the unity, like if they come together, the unity, the thought that they will have the best policies for everyone in United States of America to better their land, to better and to make it again a great nation. Guys, it is a fear, it is a threat to them. So they will fight so hard for them not to come together. They will fight it so hard and make it a political thing. They will politicize this issue of history of Black Americans in United States of America. Until now, it will be like it's something which should not be told. It's something which is not to be heard. It's something which is not. It is not something which is not supposed to be taught even in school, so that the children should not even know their history of where they have come from. And there have been this there have been these debates of the textbook that these things should be written, they should be taught in the schools, and there is a museums whereby the pictures which are there, yes, that is what the history of Black America is all about. The museums, they portray what the Black Americans went through and what they are and what has made them to be that resilience even to date. Yes, and the movement and monuments which has been made or how it has been there, you can see some monuments, they are there, and they are all over, yes, for them to be reminded like this is what happened and you matter, the Black Lives Matter and all that. But now to the politicians or to the people who are elite, they want to make it like it is a show of tensions and resilience. They want to make it like it is a show of that is which is not supposed to be told, because they think like they want you to think like it's not a right thing. But what I know is they are the shows of tensions and resilience. Yeah, that's what I can see about it. And guys, by doing so, you can see that these things has been politicized until like this month that the Black Americans, they are celebrating the Black History Month, and the government is not even recognizing what this is all about. But okay, fine, I don't want to go to that route, but you can see like this government of United States of America, they're not even recognizing, they're not even there, like they don't even care what is happening. But let me tell you guys, like forgetting or erasing the history is like forgetting about the future, because once they meddle with their thinking of where you have come from, it is meaning that you don't know where even you are going, because you cannot trace where you have come from, and if you cannot connect it with the future, meaning that you're nowhere, you're just living. And you should not be like that. You should not just be existing. You should be existing with a focus, knowing that this is where we are going. And guys, don't even be like, feel like you should not know. It is good to learn. And these videos, I've put it here for us to learn and to get more into what the history holds of Black Americans, because it's the history which makes the America to be what it is. Yes, despite all this disagreement, the conversation is still growing that in a movement like Black Lives Matters and all these, in June 10th, the celebrations are making white to confront history and to reconsider the role is shaping the future. Yes. And despite all these conversations, despite all these things which are disagreement and disagreement about the history to be told, or the history of Black Americans, there are still some conversations which are still glowing, whereby we can see like conversation of we can still see the conversation that they are still glowing, and we can see the movement like Black Lives Matters. June 10th celebrations are still ongoing, and making these are the things, or these are the points which are making the white people to confront the reality and to confront the history, and to reconsider the role of the history, that they are just there to shape their future. Guys, it's a good movement and it's a good thing now. Like, it's always good to remember where you have come from. It's something which is very much recommendable to know where you have come from and to know that where you are going. And by this many and more, we have just created this thing for the education. They're there for us to know much and to know more of the origin or the history of the Black Americans in United States of America. And by doing so, we are still learning about the history of Africa. I mean, of the history of America, whereby we all get inspired to know what made these people to be who they are and to be where they are. Like, we are learning a lot. Like, yes, all that they have, there's somebody, or there are people who pay the cost to be what America is all about. And the cost was the slavery. So the Black American indigenous people, or the let me call it like that, the black Americans indigenous, or the Black Americans ancestors, they built this nation with blood, because they were enslaved. They were enslaved. Like, for instance, there was plantations that they were tendering those plantations of sugarcane and cotton and all these, and those were just the system that were made for them to be enslaved. Until now, like, because they were strong, I think they were strong enough. There was this thing of police and the law. The law was not made for good. It wasn't made for the whites or for anyone to go there, but it was made for these blacks to be enslaved and to be jailed. Yes, there are some systems, and many systems which are even in existence right this moment. They were made because of the Black supremacy, because of the Black American supremacy. And guys, we are still feeling, and even in the presence, we can feel, even with the worldwide, we can feel like, we can feel it. We can feel how these people impacted the world in a big way, that there are so many systems that they were practiced because they were there and they were created, or they were planned for the Black Americans people to be enslaved. And that is what, and those are the systems which are still be used globally by so many continents, by the so many nations, that there are people who are still enslaved, but we think like it's that they are the systems which are there for the good. They're the people, they're the systems which are there for good or for betterment of the people of the world, but they are not. They were just copied from a slavery system, because that is what the elite rich Americans were doing, just for them to enrich themselves, for them to be great, for them to be mighty. But still, there were whites, and many of them who suffered in the hearts of these people, because it was like the white people supremacy. They were getting small, and the circle was getting smaller and smaller. Now, until now, that like they took other whites, and that's why you're seeing Latinos. That's why you're seeing the Philippines. That's why you're seeing so many nationalities in United States of America. They were not going there for them to be anything. They were going there to eradicate, or to remove, or to make the Black supremacy to look small, whereas it was the largest, it was the biggest. But now you see, they joked, or they played this game of the mindset. They didn't want you to know that you are huge, you are great, you are mighty, you are more in that ladder. They made you to feel and to think like you don't even matter, or you are not even that much beautiful. I mean, you're not that much great. You are not more, because when you are numbered, they made you to believe that you don't have numbers, whereas many were the Black Americans. And that's why they brought these immigrants, from these white brown immigrants, for them to be more, and to make the black supremacy small, to make you black Americans to be small in numbers. And that's why now you are seeing like whatever they did, it is repeated even up to date, because you can see the system even of today. That is what has happening in United States of America. Like they join against one race. Everybody's like they gather against one race of of Black Americans. When they were electing, or when they were doing the elections and all that, they were not electing based on the policies which are supporting them, but they were doing it to oppress or to continue this thing of slavery, of the race against the Black Americans. And that's why the Black Americans right this moment as you're speaking, they're not much of on what is going on, like ICE demonstrations and all that about the immigrants, because they know very well that the choices that they made about the policies that they should support them, they did it very rightly, though they were not supported. And there is no time and there is no way that they will ever support what the immigrant did by supporting the white supremacy. And guys, with this and many more, continue. And with this and many more, guys, we really appreciate, and we'll come back with many more. So subscribe to our channel, like and share, and we will really appreciate. Thank you.